Something also very unique about your district is that you represented the United States Naval Academy and the
Mhm.
thousands of active duty service members, veterans, and families during your tenure in the State House, and your congressional district covers much of that area as well. So, how do you plan to continue to fight for military members and veterans' rights in Congress?
Yeah, it's really important, not just to my district. It's important to me personally. My father was an Army veteran. I grew up vacationing at Fort Dix, which is a very random place to send to take your kid, but there was a water park, so it was very cool when you're 6 years old. Um, it's so important that we make life just a little bit easier for active duty military spouses, and our veterans. And so there's a lot of ways we can do that through tax code. So I'm looking forward to the tax bill in the next year. But I'm also something I'm very passionate about because we experienced it in my own family. My grandfather served in Vietnam and Korea and came back with what we never called it at the time, but we now do, PTSD. And he treated it himself via alcoholism. And that had obviously, the effects on other generations of my family that many families experience across this country. Even to this day, we're losing 22 veterans a day to suicide. And it's very clear that what we are doing is not working from a policy response. So I've been able to work on this issue a little bit at the State House. We passed a bill, one of the first in the nation, that set aside funding, dedicated funding, for alternative treatment therapies for veterans living with PTSD at academic institutions. So places where there are already, very strong protections and regulations, but there are research trials on utilizing things like psilocybin to see if, and there's been positive results. But we need to open that up a little more for our veterans living with PTSD, and try to get a little more creative in our policy solution, because we're talking about saving lives. It's really important to my district, to my state, and I'd love to be a leader on those issues when I get to Congress.
Well, thank you for sharing that personal family story there. And so, given that family history there and your just passion overall for service members and their families, I want to ask you your thoughts on President-elect Donald Trump's nominee, former Fox News anchor Pete Hegseth, to leave the Department of Defense.
Unfortunately, I'm not in the Senate, so I don't get a vote on that nomination. Have spoken with our current U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen, our incoming U.S. Senator Angela Alsobrooks, and they're going to have a very high bar for all of the nominations the president has put forth. I am deeply concerned about the grave allegations he, in particular, is facing around sexual assault, which is an issue that plagues our military, has plagued the U.S. Naval Academy and many of our institutions across this country. So I consider that pretty disqualifying, especially because it's such a major challenge for our service members, particularly. It's not women alone, but certainly has a huge impact on diversifying and strengthening our service members. So to have somebody in charge who has very grave allegations of sexual violence is deeply concerning to me. And again, I don't have a vote, but I consider it pretty disqualifying.